Okay. Max went to the restroom. Okay. Can anyone in the room, I don't want to miss this moment, can anyone in the room who was a part of the film and is here tonight stand up just so we can acknowledge you beyond? Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you. We have a lot to get through tonight, so I'm going to dive right in and start. I have an incredible panel, one more person who will be hopping on in just a moment, but I'll start by introducing myself a little bit, and forgive me for reading, but it matters too much to get it wrong. My road to prison started when I survived a violent crime in 2017 and was diagnosed with PTSD. Colleagues from Serbia worked with me for a month to create a movement therapy for trauma rehabilitation, a practice to restore a sense of safety in the traumatized body. I felt that no one had ever received such personal care and wanted to offer this practice to other women initially, but felt on second thought that the quote-unquote responsible parties were also acting out of complex traumas and no one was tending to their bodies. I was also now harboring a new and paralyzing fear of men. I risked positioning myself to be held hostage by my experiences, and I concluded that my healing likely required drawing closer to this fear. So I began teaching movement therapy for trauma rehabilitation at Cook County Jail and Stateville Correctional Facility. This work immediately complicated my narrative. We needed each other to heal. We needed to see one another, to confess and cry together, and to remember that I am because of who we all are. The men inside have become my teachers and some of my favorite humans. There is a think tank inside, a group of men serving life sentences with undergraduate and master's degrees, who started a nonprofit called Parole Illinois. They have written a bill. You have information about it, although the number has changed, so I'll have to update the number of the bill for you. We have not had a system of parole in Illinois since 1978, when we determined our parole boards were racist and simply got rid of earned discretionary reentry systems. The number of lives taken by the state on life row today is so much larger than the number of lives formerly taken by the state through the now abolished practice of death row. Help me understand this progress. Since I met these men, I began testifying in hearings with Illinois lawmakers who hide behind victims, claiming that the victims want them locked up and want the key thrown away. I believe this is a tragic misunderstanding of our interconnectedness. Until all of us are whole, none of us are safe. Naturally, I didn't say that. In fact, all three of us heard it yesterday from a man named Carl Vassier Smith inside of Stateville. Naturally, this issue, which often begs to take over my life, climbed into the artistic work at Theater Y. I'm also working with the think tank inside to create a piece of theater with them, which we hope to film in such a way as to conceal their incarceration until after you've fallen in love with them. For 30 years, puppet theater artist Michael Montenegro has been developing his unique style of puppet and mask theater in the Chicago community, both as a solo artist and as a collaborator with different theater groups. Commissioned projects include Argonautica with Looking Glass Theater, directed by Mary Zimmerman, and The Puppet Master of Lodz with Writers Theater, which garnered a Jeff Award for puppet design. Michael Montenegro is artistic director of Theater Zarco, which has presented for Chicago audiences many extraordinary original puppet theater plays, which you can catch glimpses of on YouTube. At present, Michael is in collaboration with Theater Y on both this film and a play entitled Little Carl, which will be presented at Chicago Shakespeare Theater this May. Michael, tell us about the birth of this film in you and how it developed into this quote-unquote final draft.
I'll try to make it short. I grew up in a family of storytellers. My father was from Chile, and we sat around the table almost every night eating dinner, telling stories, and honing the craft of storytelling without even knowing it. The thing that I realized about my father was the reason he was such a good storyteller was because every time he told a story, he actually lived it. And I think I learned something from that. And so, working in the time arts of theater and now film, I made the difficult attempt to try to live what the film was talking about. I have never been in prison. This is my imagination at work. And I say that with great humility. This is how I saw it, and I was in conversation with Melissa. She asked me about projects that I would love to do, and I just off the top of my head I said I'd love to make a film, not realizing that she would take me up on that. She actually did, and she supplied so much to make this film happen. Actors, cinematographers, a place to work, and so I wrote a screenplay, I presented it, and we built the set, and we actually didn't rehearse that much. We just jumped in and started filming, and once I had the body of footage, I spent a year putting together versions of this film, and this is the latest iteration. It's a work in progress. As you can probably tell, there's a lot of sound issues. I'm not a sound engineer, and I could really use some help with sound. But this is what I came up with. And I am so grateful to everybody that worked on it, and I'm also very grateful for your patience watching it and giving me your reactions. So that's my story.
Thanks, Michael. Steve Bynum, who featured in the film performing entirely ad-lib, is the board president of Theater Y. For nearly 2 decades, Steve was senior producer of Worldview, WBEZ's 25-year global affairs news program. He has won numerous awards in broadcast excellence and also lectures, facilitates, and moderates discussions on topics related to media's role in democracy, culture, and communities. Steve is a fellow board director and advisory committee member of a long list of important and revolutionary organizations and a cultural and spiritual leader among men. He's also a big fan of science fiction, Doctor Who especially, Duran Duran as well as foreign and pre-code 1930s film. Steve, tell us why you chose to make yourself vulnerable in this way and what you want from this artistic act.
Well, before I get into that, I want to thank our host, Facets Chicago. I'm a proud board member of Facets, and I became a board member in tribute to my good friend, Milos Stalik. And Milos taught me how to appreciate beauty in the smallest things, especially in filmmaking. And so, why did I allow myself to be vulnerable? At the beginning, when I talked about how love is weakness, and I'll be transparent because I've got many brothers, sisters, and those who are non-binary sitting here, black, brown, we understand. I mean, I grew up on the South Side that you can be ridiculed and misunderstood when you're vulnerable. you can become a target when you're vulnerable. And when I said that you must become that which you fear in order to survive, that is our reality. And so, talking to returning citizens, many who are here, God bless you and thank you for coming and giving us your time. Those who've been dealing with programs in writing and arts and expression, that the thing that they feared most was that if I write this poetry, if I, begin to sing or express myself in this way, that it will be considered weakness and that it will put a target on me. And so the idea that that human being, which is beautiful, which is an icon, an image of the divine, must then deny themselves the true beauty of artistic expression for fear of being even killed, for that matter. It's a multiplier effect, And so when Michael approached me, we had a group discussion about this. It first began, it was a bit of an esoteric conversation about art and how people interpret, consume art, and how to get people to better understand where artists are coming from. And what I wanted to just say was that this is a first world conversation. This is a conversation for the privileged, because the history of art, artistic expression, is an existential, to be or not to be, life or death expression. I think about the quilts that were patched together that created a map for the Underground Railroad. I think about great writers. There's a war in Ukraine, and Taras Shevchenko, who's considered the bard of Ukraine, forged this friendship with Ira Aldrich, this African-American opera singer, actor, performer. If you go to Stratford-on-Avon, Shakespeare's home, there are statues there, and of those statues, there's only one person of African descent that's there, and that's Ira Aldrich, and they formed this bond. And so the idea that I could take this time to express myself and be vulnerable and make it okay, that it is a sign of strength and of power and of glory and of majesty and of regency, is something that we lost, that was taken from us when we were brought here for the Middle Passage. But that we walk the earth with our heads high. We walk the earth and we look towards heaven, and we understood our connection to the divine. We walked the earth and we appreciated love and beauty through our food, our culture, our dance, our philosophy, our poetry. And the idea that that was snatched from us and then replaced with this barbarism that says that which makes us African, that which makes us indigenous, that which makes us the global majority, is something that should be denied. I had to take that opportunity, and I'm thankful for it. We filmed for a couple of days and a half, and I did a lot of talking, and so how you were able to go through that and pick anything at all is a miracle to me. But I will say this, that a number of you here are dear friends, and I want to thank my family, my wife, Linda, my daughter, Emily, my son, Joshua, his fiance, my future daughter-in-law, Brianna. She's a little revolutionary, too. Puerto Rican, and we have a lot of conversations about colonialism. But the last thing I want to say is that it wasn't until a week ago that I imagined myself in this room with all of you, where I wasn't wearing that t-shirt and that prison uniform. Every time I saw myself sitting here, I was wearing that uniform because as a black man, I am always in a prison, whether I am inside or outside. And if it is not an external prison, it's a prison of my own making. And the fact that my son, who's sitting over there, my well-educated, beautiful, brilliant son, cannot take for granted that he can leave his home and come back safely. How dare he not have that privilege? That no matter what we do or what we achieve, we are at risk. My friend, my brother, stand up, Bruce Savage. Stand up. That is one of the more brilliant human beings that I've ever known in my life. He is a teacher, he is a scholar, he is a mentor. He grew up on the South Side like I did. He went to Notre Dame like I did. He went to Georgia Tech where he's got a master's in mechanical engineering. His best friend and brother, my best friend and brother, Keith McCoy, passed away a few years ago, who was a statistical genius. And yet the burden and the stress and the strain of paying the black tax took his life because it took his health. How is it that he and his just as brilliant wife Ayana and my son and my brilliant wife, who also went to my university, and all of you all who have strived and fought just to do the day-to-day, and then we have to come here and have this same conversation. The first few minutes of that film angered me so because it is the drug of capitalism to make everything fine, to create comfort, and then to forget. Flip a light switch on, the power comes on. You go to the grocery store, you can buy your food. Life keeps going on as normal. Nothing is normal about this barbarism, this slavery, this torture. And it has to stop. And forgive me for going on.
Celia Colon is a happily married mother of 4 amazing children and a grandmother, which I can't believe, I'm sorry, that's ridiculous. She is a talk show host and producer of Powered by Pain on the JD3 TV app, which streams on Apple, Amazon, and Roku. She is an Emmy Award nominee, author, educator, inspirational speaker. She uses her unique life experiences to advocate and support legislative policies that advance smart criminal justice reform. As a passionate community leader, mentor, and organizer, since she returned home after incarceration 22 years ago, Celia has turned much of her energy to helping other women rebuild their post-prison lives through her nonprofit Giving Others Dreams. She is reimagining what reentry with support looks like for justice-impacted women. As a speaker and educator, she frequently speaks at conferences, elementary schools, universities, churches, jails, treatment centers, prisons, legislative committees, and has appeared on television, radio, and podcast shows. Celia, please tell us whatever you want us to hear or know on this subject tonight.
So, watching this was very triggering for me. I grew up in the prison system. I spent my whole youth there. My childhood, my teenage years, was stolen from me. I spent time in SEG 3 different times. And when I watched this, all I thought about was people who either killed themselves, tried to kill themselves, people that were raped. I thought about the first time that I went into a SEG room, and there was nothing but shit and blood all over the walls. Because unlike many other spaces in prison, women, when we have our periods, we're given 4 pads a month. And as a woman, you know you can go through that in a day. I thought about the time that I didn't have tissue and I had to use the sheet for 2 weeks. Or like a lot of people, they use the bathroom anytime they felt like if you were on your period that you had to use the bathroom, you run to the toilet because there was nothing. I thought about all the times that when I was there in that torture chamber, how I was denied food, I was denied a shower, I was denied the simple things that humans should have. For me, this is something that should be brought to every theater in the world, because what is happening, these are torture chambers. People go insane. People lose who they are. And as you've seen in the film that they did here, I think that that's the way the wardens are when we are in these prison cells. They don't care, they're partying, they're worried about exactly what he said. This is a capitalist world. At the end of the day, money runs everything. It creates the violence that we live in. And everybody that's ever gone to prison, I mean, everyone deserves a second chance. We are all human beings. We all evolve. We all change every day by our experiences. No one is the same, ever. And for someone to think that people who, because of poverty, 99% of people that are in prison are there because of poverty. They're not there because they wanted to commit a crime. A lot of times people think, and I'm also from the South Side, I'm from South Chicago, that people have choices. People that look like me, right? That we have choices. But in reality, we don't. The ghettos that were made by the government. The drug war that was created was also made by the government. Everything that you see, right? That's why it kills me that we live in America where everybody's supposed to be equal, but yet, no matter how many degrees I have, no matter how many awards, no matter how many this or that accolades I have, I still have to fight just to prove that I'm human and I'm able to breathe the same air as someone who doesn't have a record. But at the end of the day, no one lives life without making a mistake. That is a part of being a human being. It's a part of growing, and that's something that we do every day. And I think that when something like this is brought to front and center, it helps people realize that people are being tortured and you guys are paying for it, right? Taxpayer money, even private stocks in the prisons. I remember when Trump took office, private prison stocks soared because they knew more people would be coming in, right? They have already planted, especially for Black and brown people, they already counted on our babies as soon as they were born. One thing that kills me is right now in the state of Illinois, in the women's prison, 97% of the women that are there was a study done by the Women's Justice Institute just last year, 97% of the women that are there have a crime that is a community crime, meaning that it could be sentenced, the person could serve it in the community, that it's probationable. But yet, because 99.9% of everybody that goes to prison, usually it's won on a plea deal, because we get tired of sitting in the jails where our life is just completely taken from us. You sit in court sometimes, people are sitting in court innocent because they're trying to fight because they're innocent for 5 to 7 to 8 years. Life is still going on the outside. And as a woman, it's even harder. It's the hardest thing that you could ever do. Because as soon as you go to prison and your children are taken away from you, I don't know how many people are aware of what an ACE is, which is an adverse childhood event. As soon as a mother is separated from their children, the child automatically gets 4 ACEs. And if you look up what 4 ACEs mean, that means they are automatically doomed, hypothetically, right, to die before you're 50, to go to prison, to be a substance abuse user, to be the next number. And that's what I see. For me, this film, looking at the thin mattress, I remember rolling it up and carrying that mattress. It triggered me in a way that it'll be really hard for me to sleep tonight. But it also helps me, and it keeps my fire going, because I've been home for 21 years now, and I've been in this fight since I've been home. And I will tell you guys one thing. I'll never stop fighting. I'll never stop fighting. We deserve to live in a world where every man is created equal, where we all really truly love each other and care about one another, because what happens to you happens to me. And whatever you think that's happening in my neighborhood ain't coming to your neighborhood, you better think again, because it's coming. You have to realize that everybody coming home from prison will be your neighbor. So you got to decide, how do you want people to be treated? If people are treated like they are worth nothing, then they're going to come home like they're worth nothing. Can't treat people like animals and then expect them to come home and be soft and gentle. They say it's Department of Corrections. There's never been a correction in the Department of Corrections. There's no healing. It's torture, and especially for women. Women are raped, sexually harassed, and that's something that we have to live with for the rest of their life, our lives. Real dark space, but I'm glad that we're talking about it. I'm glad that people will understand a little bit more because of something like this. And hopefully this doesn't end, because what's happening needs to stop, and people need to realize that together, as a community, as people who care about other human beings, we can create that and stop this. Thank you.
Is an advocate, leader, and speaker in the field of restorative justice who helps individuals and families find healing in the aftermath of violence and crime. She is the founder and executive director of the Darren B. Easterling Center for Restorative Practices, a nonprofit organization that develops and advances trauma-informed solutions to support communities of color directly impacted by violent crime and mass incarceration. After the murder of her son, Darren, in 2012, Lisa decided to tell his story in a way that reshaped the narrative about who he was and the legacy he left behind. Sharing Darren's story ignited her commitment to be a voice for other young men like him and their families. Through the center, she oversees initiatives that gives those affected by gun violence and mass incarceration the tools, resources, and support they need to heal and erase the residue of trauma on their lives. In 2018, Lisa was appointed by the governor of Illinois to serve as a member of the Illinois Prisoner Review Board, a quasi-judicial body that makes decisions regarding parole, conduct, and executive clemency of incarcerated individuals, where she served until January 2023. Lisa has spoken on issues surrounding restorative justice in the media and at events including WBEZ Radio, NBC News Chicago, the University of Chicago School of Social Service Administration, and the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority. Lisa, please tell us your lived experience and your life's belief about our justice system. Right.
My lived experience. Yeah. I just turned 60. And no, thank you. My lived experience has taught me that on the other side of the worst thing that I've ever experienced is the best version of who I am. I've discovered her. As you heard in the bio, in July of 2012, I lost my youngest son to gun violence. I lost my youngest son not only to gun violence, but to his own lifestyle choices. My son was both perpetrator and victim in the incident that cost him his life. It was a drug deal disguised as a robbery, and nobody won. At the end of the day, I've learned, it's been 10 years that Darren has been gone. And I've often been asked in settings like this, where there's Q&A, how do you do it? How do you survive something like that? How do you not only survive something like that, but thrive on the other side of losing a child? How do you make a decision to take back the narrative, rewrite the narrative, and then redefine the legacy? Not just for him, but for me and for his children. He has a 14-year-old daughter and a 15-year-old son. How do you thrive on the other side of that? I understand a couple of things. One of the things that I understand in accepting the loss of my son is that I didn't get to keep him longer than he was supposed to be here. How do I tell his story so emphatically with vulnerability? I do so because I respect his decision. I don't like it, but I respect it. Those were his choices. And the consequences have placed me in a position, the consequences of his choices changed the trajectory of my life. I was unemployed when he died. A few years after, the same year that he died, I got a job as an administrative assistant working for the Museum of Science and Industry. 2 years after he died, I just started talking, and I've not stopped. The day after he died, how did I get here? And I forgot the question. The day after he died, the newspaper, he was killed in Park Forest, Illinois, and the newspaper in that area wrote a story about it. It was on a Sunday afternoon, and the headline in that story read, "Man from Park Forest shot to death, had drug and felony convictions." They didn't mention him by his name until the second paragraph. I didn't know at the time what I didn't know, but what I did know was that that was not okay. That media outlet did not get to minimize the entire 25 years of my child's life based on one incident that happened on one day in his 25 years. They didn't get to judge him, and they didn't get to judge me. And it was that day that I decided that he was more than the worst thing that he had ever done, and I was more than the worst thing that I had ever experienced. And together, because we're still together, together, we were going to, again, rewrite his narrative and redefine his legacy. And so that's what I've gotten to do over the last 10 years. Did I know that it was going to take me to the places that I've been? I had no idea. I just stood firm in my belief that the media and no one else had the right to decide who my son was and who I am. Because the newspaper article there was a hard copy, but there was also a digital copy. And folks get real slick standing behind a computer screen and saying whatever it is that they want to say, and they can say all kinds of stuff. And so there were lots of comments about who I had to be as a mother of a young man that would go and live the lifestyle choices that he led. I'm more than that. I'm more than anything that anybody could ever possibly think of me. And so was my son. Again, that was one day in the life of each of us, and it doesn't define us. I've learned that we're missing the humanity in each and every one of us. We're missing our own humanity, and we're missing the humanity in the people that we see, that we judge. I was floored when I heard Carvasio Smith make the statement that he made yesterday. I will be wearing a t-shirt, I will have it tattooed, and if I didn't already have a license plate that said something real cool, I would have that. There is a healing that needs to take place in this land. The harms that are being committed, that we are witnessing on the nightly news, are not being committed because people are just simply monsters. The harms that we see, the harms that we witness, the harms that we have been a part of, we've experienced, are a result of people who are hurting. There's no more truer statement that hurt people hurt people. And the fact that unresolved trauma is unresolved is real. And it is the catalyst for the harm that we are experiencing. And I'm saying to you, I must say it again because Melissa casually, said it as she read her statement. But trust and believe that until all of us heal, nobody is safe.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Got a fifth page in here somewhere. There she is. Max Cerda has had a difficult but rewarding journey that began in the 1970s when Max, then a teenager, was involved with gangs. One night he and a close friend were ambushed, and his friend, who was like a brother, died in his arms. Traumatized, he made the terrible decision to avenge his friend's death. And in 1979, he landed in the prison system. Max was incarcerated from the age of 16 until he was 35 years old. In March of 2021, 20 years later, I'm skipping a lot of years that I hope he'll fill into. 20 years later, Max Cerda was appointed to the Illinois Prisoner Review Board, the first and only formerly incarcerated individual ever to do so. Yes. This opportunity let Max know that his life's journey had come full circle in a most prestigious way. Max and many of us are deeply grateful to the governor and Madam Lieutenant Governor for having the political courage and the spiritual morality to believe in who he is today and what it took for him to get there. I trust him to fill in all the incredible accomplishments, the powerful work he is doing towards violence interruption and prevention and reentry initiatives in the Latinx communities. Max, you have a very unique perspective on this issue. Please share with us whatever you want us to know or hear.
Thank you. And thank everyone for being here and giving me the opportunity and the space to connect. Watching this film first, like this sister said, it brought me back. You remember the part where they show in prison, they call it a gallery, the cell, then you got the fence and all that. When I was 18 years old, I was a minority. I was tried as an adult. I was a juvenile, but they tried me as an adult. There was this white kid next to me. We was the same. And that night, him and I was talking, and he was scared, just like I was. Then later on that night, probably like 2 in the morning, the guard grabbed grabbed me through the bars, and I'm hearing him running and the keys and all that. And I heard her mention my cell, the brother that was next to me in another cell. So I banged on the wall, and I promise you, and I'm ashamed of it, I don't remember this brother's name because he had such an impact in my life. I banged on the wall and I said, bro, they want to shake us down. I took my mirror out and I looked at him and he was hanging. He had hung himself. I stood there looking at him. It took them at least like 10 minutes to come up to the gallery and everything. They took us out the cell. But I was looking at this brother, man, and I'm thinking to myself, what was his last thoughts? You know, and I was staring at him for so long. One eye looked like he was scared, and his other eye was like he was at peace. And the only thing that I could fathom from that was that this brother was conflicted, man. He was broken, and these people didn't care. They didn't see it. And a lot of people always say, man, people that kill themselves, they're weak. That's bullshit. It takes a lot of courage to kill yourself, man. That conviction of whatever level a person might be in. But seeing that brother hanging in there made me realize, made me think, when I asked myself, what was his last thoughts? The thought of that told me, I don't even want to think like that, man. So something happened with me where my mindset started changing. Now, when I got incarcerated, I was 16. I was never enrolled in a high school. I was illiterate, didn't know how to read and write. People used to write my letters. So when I went to SEG, from 1979 to 96, I was incarcerated. Of those 19 years, I did 5.5 in SEG. At first, walking into that cell, like the sister mentioned, like you walk in and say, damn, this is where it's at, huh? This is it. But that brother hanging there years later in my mind reminded me of, don't think crazy, man. Maintain. And I'm young and I'm illiterate, I don't know how to read. I didn't have the ability to read books to empower me. So everything was a thought process. Everything was power thought for me. And from that point on, I met this, there was this biker from LA. He was an angel, Hell's Angel, called him Pops. He taught me how to read. You know, he started teaching me how to read through my disciplinary reports, my tickets, because I didn't know how to read. Because they did a cell extraction on me in Menard. Because when you get locked up in Illinois State Prison back then, you don't talk to the administration. And I was already illiterate, and they said I had to go see the adjustment committee. I didn't know what the adjustment committee, that just was like a big word. That was like the system. That's the warden, man. I don't want to go. So I refused to go. So they came in my cell and they did a cell extraction, man, and they whipped the hell out of me. They brought me back and went to the adjustment committee, and this brother Pops tells me, hey, bro, I'm a biker, man. And I thought he was gangbanging with me. I said, you're a biker? I don't know what you are, and this is, you know, I'm all swolled up. A couple weeks later, they did it again. They got me to the adjustment committee, and I didn't want to go. They went in there and did a cell extraction. So then, when they brought me back, this brother banged the wall, and all. He had Band-Aids and gouges and all that for me to heal myself. And then that night, after I did that, I passed it back to him. He goes, hey, man, you know, why are you letting them do that to you? I said, bro, you know, so many. He goes, no. You're not going to win them physically. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about intellectually. Why are you letting them whip you here first, man? And I didn't get that. I didn't, you know, but I didn't understand it in its totality. But I know that there was substance in that. It meant something. And then he realized, he goes, well, what, you know, he started breaking it down what the adjustment committee is. The adjustment committee is the court within the penitentiary system, and yada, yada, yada. And he goes, so what's your ticket? Well, you know, and that's when he realized I didn't know how to read. And he asked me, hey, man, you know how to read? I go, yeah, but I ain't stupid. But, so he taught me how to read, man. He started teaching me. And I went to 8 elementary schools before I got incarcerated. And what those schools couldn't do, this brother did for me. A-E-I-O-U. So after, you know, I started doing my time, I was scared, man. I'm not gonna lie. My brother died in my arms. He died squeezing my thumb. And in my mind, I was broken. My spirit was broken. I was traumatized. I didn't know, you know, I was so embarrassed. I was broken. And I didn't want to stop because I was scared. Because I felt that if I take off this gorilla suit, I'm gonna become prey. So I literally became a byproduct of my environment. When I got transferred to Stateville in '84 from Menard, that's when I really started getting an understanding of that, what this life for me, what this prison life is going to do for me, or what I want to do for it. And I started educating myself. At that time, there was a Latino committee there, and they had the so-called oppositions that were part of this committee, and my elders were telling me, hey brother, you should join this committee. So Latino, I said, man, it's too late for all that, man. Too much blood was spilled, it's too late. And so I kept going to SEG, On my last trip to SEG, I finally got it. This time I already knew how to read, and I was reading books. I was reading books on meditation and my culture. And then it was an awakening. It was an awakening for me. So I went to the brothers when I got out of SEG, and I said, bro, I got it now, man. I understand, you know, I want to be part of this committee. And this committee, it consisted of, at that time, I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, I'm sure there's some people that might, but in the gang world, you have people and you have folks. And so we had some Latino people, Latino folks, and some Latinos that weren't plugged up, that weren't involved, but were stand-up guys. And it was all about education. It was all about education. And so I got real into this, and I started realizing that cultura cura, that culture heals. Because it was for, you know, I knew that I was broken, and when you know that you're hurt, what you do, you go to the doctor. You know you got to get healed. And all these thoughts were coming into me, and where they came from, I don't know. I don't know. I didn't get into religion. I respect it. I embrace it, but I'm very spiritual. I have this poster of a Lakota Sioux warrior, and he's on a war horse, and he's like extended like this. And on the corner it said that religion are for those that are scared going to hell, whereas spirituality are for those that been there. So I embrace that. So during this time, you know, I started to educate myself, and what really did it was culture. It was cultural awareness, cultural identity, culture, you know, Latino consciousness, and that started changing my mindset. You know, I started seeing what I thought were my oppositions, especially in the visitor room. There was one guy that I was always at, and his mother came to see him when I was in the visitor room with my mom, and I'll be damned if they didn't look alike. I said, damn, his little sister looked like my little sister. And we tripping with each other, man. So that only further told me how much of a mistake I made in my life. And that why did it have to take my brother to get killed, and then the victims in my case to get killed? Why did it have to take all this for me to get it, man? Later on in life, I would understand it. Life sets paths for us, right? And where it defines us and redefines us, man, is where we find our purpose. In fear is where we find our courage. A lot of people say our courage is in our heart, and our true courage is in our true fear, man. Like the brother alluded to earlier. And that is so true. And finding this ability to love my people allowed me to love me. And one of the things that really helped me in my journey, and I always say this because I do a lot of presentations, I deal with a lot of kids in high schools, I service quite a few high schools. We just started a men's group. I realized that it's not how the story begins, right? It's the legacy. It's what it leads to, and the legacy we eventually leave behind. If we empower ourselves with a purpose in life, and our purpose is usually to correct, for me, at least I'm gonna speak for myself, my purpose is my redemption. My remorse is my healing. I cannot do nothing in this world other than help try to save and change lives. And in doing that, a lot of us that do street intervention, what we actually do, we always say we save and change lives, but what we do is change the mindset. It is the mindset. You know, a lot of our brothers and sisters today out here experience generational violence, you know, are broken. They come to the system like I did. And the people that guard us, that the wardens and all that, they don't understand. They don't understand because they don't care. We don't come out their household. So they don't care. We have to rehabilitate ourselves. Like the sister said, IDOC, Illinois Department of Correction, we have to be our own rehabilitators, man. We have to find purpose in our life. To this day, I cannot stop thinking about that brother that hung himself, because his death, as ironic as it sounds, gave me life. And I embraced it that way, because you know how they say life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you perceived it. And that mindset, that apparatus of my mind allowed me to see things, and to this day, the same way. Everything that we go through is a state of mind. If we have purpose in our life, you know, when we have purpose in our life, that gives us that reason. When we commit a crime, when we commit murder, I'm going to keep it 100. When we commit murder, not only are we committing murder, we're committing spiritual suicide. So, to the day that I die, I'm in spiritual redemption. Dying is not what fears me. I embrace death. What fears me is not living right. And living right is the giving of myself, man. You know, take of me. Use from my mistakes, man. Because with knowledge comes responsibility. And that responsibility is sharing it, man. We got to share everything that we go through, because storytelling, like the brother's saying, is powerful. Because there's magical things to words when they apply to us, right? The right person tells you they love you, they mean something. The right person tells you, hey, I can't stand you. That affects you. There's magical things to words when they apply to us. And being able to sit on the prisoner review board was an experience that caught me all the way by surprise. When my director told me, hey man, I have a friend at the lieutenant's office, they're trying to make this radical change, and they were trying to find a returning citizen to sit on the board. I said, oh wow, that's cool. He goes, how about you? I go, man, they ain't gonna hire me, man. You know, like I said, and I make myself vulnerable through my truth. I got convicted for a double murder and attempt murder. I wish I could take that back, not because you guys are there or here, but because I still live with it. It hurts that for a lot of brothers and sisters that take this path, that we got to go to these things, you know, that create who we end up becoming. What I want to leave with this film and everything is that people can change. The power of change happens through the power of healing. Like Sister Lisa said, we got to heal. This city is hurting. This city is bleeding. Our spirit is broken. And we must know that, and we got to find the peace, man. Thank you.
I feel that it might be important to allow a response from anyone in the room. Would you like to help me get this to them?
One thing I want to acknowledge that there are advocacy organizations like Restore Justice Illinois, Pro Illinois, other group. All of them, could you stand up, please? If you're returning citizens or you work with these organizations, please stand. Thank you. If we could, if maybe someone in the audience would like to make a comment from one of these organizations or groups, or somebody out who's being shy. Right here? Here? Right there, stand by. All right.
Thank you. That was a highlight. I just want to say thank you for all the stories. movie, the film was definitely triggering. I think for anybody that has been incarcerated, it definitely, you definitely felt something. But to the panel, to the artists, first of all, thank you. I can only imagine how it is to feel to try to act something like that, knowing that it's actually people that live that. So I just want to say thank you to that. And to the other panelists, I think it's a very true statement that people do change, and stories do change lives. I myself was convicted of a double murder, did 28 years, just came home a little over 2 years ago. And got into the work, advocacy, just speaking, and it's more so just that lived experience. Telling people who may think they know what goes on behind that 33-foot wall, what actually happens, regardless if they want to hear it or not. I just want to say that, you know, that's what we continue to do. It takes a lot of courage to do it. Comes from a lot of different places. Everybody has a different story, but everyone who has that story definitely should always want to tell it.
What work you do, Swan?
Who do you work for?
I'm a policy manager at Restore Justice Foundation, and I volunteer with Restore Justice Illinois. Can I sit down now? Thank you.
Wow, welcome, once again, welcome home.
Thank you.
First and foremost, my name is Nicole Davis. I go by the name of Coco, west side of Chicago. And I just want to thank you so much for filming this. Wow. I want to thank all the panelists up there. And special thanks to my sister, CC. We've been boots on the ground working. We ain't free until all of our brothers and sisters are free.
Yes.
It's going to take us to save us. Looking at this film just brought back so many memories for me. I did 16 months in the SHU, 14 years in federal prison. Was sentenced to 22 years for a drug case. Ghost drugs. There was no drugs found. There was no drugs found, but I can admit that I was arrested for money. I did have a large amount of money, almost $1 million in my possession. So most likely when I was going to trial, the judge, the jury, the prosecutor, they was probably looking at most of the money and figured that, well, if she can come up with almost $1 million in a couple of days to purchase this drug, then we're going to sentence her to the highest part of the guidelines. The guidelines is totally different from the states. You know, we get sentenced in a box. I'm saying that to say that we got to be the voice. We got to continue to tell our story and not let other people tell our story. I felt exactly what you were saying when you said that it was written in the article. They had my picture and the charges on the front page of the Chicago Sun-Times. And when they told the story, they made it seem like I was a monster. That I was literally polluting the city, the west side of Chicago, filling it up with drugs. And I am not the one who was bringing the drugs into Chicago at all, right? And I can go on and on just talking about the unjust in the criminal system, the department. How I was treated being confined in the SHU for 16 months. Just thinking back of the young ladies in the cell next to me just crying and screaming. And one of the young ladies that I was reading the Bible to, I didn't know what she was doing in that other room, but later on found out that she was chopping up a raisin to put in the food to eat it. And I just heard all the police officers running the next day because she had died. The blades exploded in her body and probably just ripped her insides apart. These are all the untold stories that people do not know what goes on behind that wall. It's trauma. And God knows I was traumatized just being in the next cell and knowing that this had happened to this young lady, that we've been reading the Bible every night. And to know that I lost a friend, I lost a sister. Yeah, looking at that just, I won't get no sleep. I won't get no sleep. I continue to think about it and think about it, talk about it until they hear us. And I'm just so happy that they have this brother sitting on the parole board, the review board, because they need to hear from you. They need to hear from returning residents. I'm the founder of the Talk to Me Foundation for kids whose parents are incarcerated. Our kids are not heard. Our kids are hurting. Our kids need healing. They have been traumatized as well. And I just want to say once again, thank you for everyone that's sitting on this panel, because we need to hear this and we need to take this around the world and continue to talk, continue to voice our opinion, continue to let our voice be heard. Talk about all the women and all the men that we have left behind. I'm fighting right now so hard for a lady that's serving 2 life sentences plus 50 years. She's been in the federal prison for 30 years. Yes, we have been fighting. Yes, we have brought some women home. But the work is not done. It's not done. We got more work to do. Amen. And the only way we can do it is to do it together. Thank you so much. Yeah, just speaking to the audience and the panel, this is very enlightening. Very enlightening. Just to see him in the cell, disturbed, no one in there. And what happens in the cell is you count everything till you can't count it no more. You count the bricks till you can't count them no more. Yeah. You count the scabs on the wall till you can't count them no more. You start counting the lines in between and the mold till you can't count them no more. All right? And just looking at that, right? I went to jail when I was 16. Right? My mother was saved, sanctified, filled with the Holy Ghost, has 8 children, right? and then here I come, and I was angry. Nobody asked me why I was angry, because she was saved and sanctified, and everybody come talking to her, talking crap, and in her face talking. And I was like, Mom, why do you let people talk to you like that? By the grace, she said, by the grace of God, He won't allow them to strike me. I said, well, that won't happen to me. This is how I became who I was. Anybody say something to me is going down. That's how I thought about it. I came home when I was 27, right? And what happened was, you get all these programs that come into the penitentiary, the penal system, that says they help you out. When I came home, once again, I was 27. The program was only for the youth that stopped at 25. Let's change the narrative. Everybody talk about let's change the narrative. I'm an iron worker. 22-year iron worker, right? I founded I'm also the president of the board for the Chicago Women of Trade. We're changing the narrative, guys, right? I'm also the founder of a program I found called Sister, I Got You, right? Also, I'm also have a program called Brother I'm Here as well. And part of that with CC up there with the GOD Giving Others Dreams, that helps with our mental awareness, right? The thing you guys not realizing is, when you want to change the narrative, everybody say, oh, we giving them a second chance. Who said we had a first? So here, Sister I Got You, and GOD program, we giving out first chances. We changing the narrative, giving you a first chance. This is what we do, right? So with that being said, this movie is very impactful. You know, and Max, just changing the narrative. How do we change the narrative? When I go into the Salvation Army and I teach the men that's coming out of the penal system and also coming out of the federal prison, which are two different types of prisons, we teach them how to retrain their thinking. How do you teach somebody how to retrain their thinking after something that we just saw in that movie? How to love yourself. You can't retrain your thinking without loving yourself and knowing your self-worth, right? You can't know your self-worth without learning how to forgive yourself and others, right? So these programs and these steps that we teach together as a team teaches you how to survive outside of life. I heard somebody mention suicide. You can't take a suicidal person from here and offer them a job. Oh, we're giving them these big time jobs, but you forgot this. You can't take this and give it to this without changing this, right? So what you're seeing on the screen, this man laying down on that, and he's suffering. Hungry. He's suicidal. His man don't know where he's coming and going. My nephew went to jail for having a fight. And they put him, just by him being a football player and being 6'6", they put him in a cell, and 30 days. Come to find out he was innocent. 30 days he's schizophrenic now, right? So how do we change that narrative? How do we help that child, right? That was a football player, basketball player, baseball player, just to keep from being in the streets, have a small incident, and just the size of him. And he's a black man. They put him in there 30 days. He started saving his urine underneath the bed. He came home, and we never shared this, even outside of my family. He came home and felt he had to be the savior of the family. And he was taking urine and feces and wiping them all on my sister. You understand? How do we change those narratives? So when you see these guys on the TV and they breaking them down and they beating them down, ladies and gentlemen, panel, that's not who that person was raised up to be. I told you I was. My mom was saved and sanctified, filled with the Holy Ghost. And only by the glory of God, look who I am now. Right? So, it's not the point of changing. I retrained my thinking. I was raised in church. I know who God is. I know who Jesus is. I understand. I started relating with the Bible, blacks in the Bible. Something that I studied. I started learning history. I'm studying right now the best history book known to man, the Bible, right? So to God be the glory of, oh man, just you filming this film, and I was sitting back there trying to figure it out at first. And I'm nudging my sister like, man, this started off slow. And then now I see this brother, now I'm just looking in the back. I'm looking at the warden, and me and Cece sit back. I said, oh yeah, that's the warden right there. Oh, that's the deputies right there. Oh, that's the secretary. You're on this side. But you don't see what goes on the inside. So to God be the glory. You guys keep on keeping on and doing what you're doing. And every program that's in here that's reaching back, trying to help. Don't be on the outside looking in, because I'm quite sure everybody is in here don't look like what they've been through. Everybody here has probably had an opportunity to go to jail for stealing a candy bar. You done tripped somebody and you could have bust their head and went to prison. So, it's just a bump in the road, and as we keep going forward and pushing forward, to God be the glory, we keep moving. Amen.
I want to be respectful for all of your time, and really it's, if we can take just a moment to talk about solutions. This is a global problem. It's not just a U.S. problem. My radio show I produced with gentleman Jerome McDonald is sitting in the audience out there. There in France, 6 to 8% of the population is Muslim. 60 to 70% of France's prison population is Muslim. So this is a problem. You go to the favelas in Rio de Janeiro, and Afro-Brazilians are being gunned down by police, just like black people and brown people being gunned down by police here. This is an international problem, and it's all around the cycle of money, and it's around greed, and it's around the cheap labor that we get out of prisons. It's a form of slavery that we've legalized and legitimized, which is what we tend to do in this country sometimes. And I really would like to hear from someone who's working in policy. You've received policy sheets around what exactly people can do, what buttons can they push, how can people become organized and get involved, if anyone wants to.
Thank all of you. Thank you. I'm so humbled by and grateful to all of you who have shared your stories. I'm working with Melissa and some other people here with Parole Illinois. It's an organization that was started by people who have life sentences at Stateville, and they found that no other criminal justice organizations were focused on people who have very long sentences, because those are the people who have been the most demonized, and there's so much that needs to be transformed, but this is one way of beginning to chip away at this whole apparatus to recognize that people with very long sentences deserve to be treated as human beings, like all of us who have made mistakes and are not perfect, but as you all have put so compellingly, have so much to offer. And so we have legislation that would provide parole eligibility to all people after they have served 20 years in prison. It's the only pending parole bill that recognizes that everyone, after they have served 20 years, well, you know, we wish we had made it less than 20 years, but people told us that 20 years was what would be politically feasible. And so if you want to help this effort, it's about the legislation, but it's also recognizing basically that these people are human beings, that, as you all said, we only heal together, and we have, look up paroleillinois.org and sign up for our updates, and lots of people, we have, lots of opportunities for people to help with this. What?
Call your legislator.
Call your legislator, thank you, Melissa. Call your legislator, write your legislator, and tell them to support the Earned Reentry Bill. It's SB 2129 and HB 3373. But if you can also go to paroleillinois.org and find that information. Thank you so much.
You want to mention something about Theater Y?
Okay, yeah, thank you. You can tell that all of us could spend years talking about this, and I'm so grateful for your attention and your presence tonight and your ears. We have just purchased a building in North Lawndale. Thank you. And we are having a housewarming party on Monday night, which you are all very welcome to attend. It is going to be an amazing night full of extraordinary talent from North Lawndale and beyond. And we're thrilled to have you as part of our family. If it's the first time that we've interacted with you, please don't make it the last. And we'll see you in North Lawndale.
What's the address?
3611 West Cermak, but you can also look it up on our website, and I hope to see all of you there Monday. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.